Hi, I'm Kirby Allison. I'm really excited to be outside of London visiting Eastbourne, outside of Brighton, here at the Lastmaker House, located just blocks from the beautiful English seaside. I'm here with Dominique Casey, who's a master lastmaker and shoemaker who has an incredible 35-year career in this industry. And one of the things that really makes Dominique particularly unique, for as long as Dominique has been a shoemaker, he's also been a teacher, teaching young, aspiring shoemakers how to make lasts and how to make shoes. So Dominique, super excited to be here. We're actually here at the Lastmaker House, which is kind of the most recent incarnation of your kind of passion of giving back and teaching.
Yeah. Exactly. So the Lastmaker House is a business that Stephen Lowe and I set up, which is really about training young people to make lasts, really, something that you can't do anywhere in the world. So we've got the skills and we had the machinery and we had the space downstairs. So we just decided was an opportunity just to set up a small business which takes young people or takes anybody who's actually interested in learning to come and make a last. And we run short 4-day courses where people can come and just make themselves a pair of lasts. Yeah. We're not going to train people to be last makers, but what you can do is get the experience of making a last for yourself, come down here and learn all the basic skills that you'd need to go and make one and then carry on and learn to make some more.
So it could be in many ways kind of the foundation that would then at least give someone kind of the pre-qualification to go out and apply to become an apprentice.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's to become a proper last maker, I mean, it's a several-year apprenticeship, right?
It's years. It's years. You know what? We always say that it's a lifetime of work. So even after 35 years in shoemaking, you still learn things. So it's a journey. It's a process. Yeah. It's a journey that kind of never ends, really. Yeah. But you can give young people an opportunity to start to learn the basics, and that must be a good thing going forward.
And you've had an incredible career. I mean, 35 years, very senior master last maker. So walk us through some of the different places that you've been and taught that have kind of just led you to where you are now.
Yeah. Well, I was very lucky in that originally, when I went in the early 80s to Cordwainers, the shoe school, and I did a diploma in shoe design and shoemaking there. And I was very lucky when I actually finished and graduated from there that I went on and I had an apprenticeship as an orthopaedic shoemaker. So what I learned to do was actually make shoes for people with really difficult fitting feet. And that's probably one of the best trainings you can go into, really, because you're actually having to fit feet on people's shoes who have difficulty walking, they may have had polio, they may have leg splints. So it gives you a really good, solid grounding in all of the different art of actual shoemaking. Wow. And then I was offered a chance to actually go back to Cordwainers 15 years later to the shoemaking school and actually teach on the degree for pattern making and design then. So I actually started teaching part-time. So I've always believed that you actually have to work commercially in the working world and actually then teach and share the skills. So I went to Cordwainers, the shoe school, and taught pattern making and design. And then in the year 2000, I went to the Royal College of Art and taught the MA in footwear design there. Very much more fashion orientated, pattern making orientated, but it was the thing about the young people coming through the Royal College is that they're always interested in forward fashion. So they're always interested in tricky heel making, tricky design work. So I taught there, even when I was still working as a shoemaker. So I was working as a shoemaker at Cleverley's at the time when I was actually working at the Royal College as well. So, I always managed to have a balance there. Okay. Well, I went in '83 as a work experience to John Lobb. Okay. And then, unfortunately, when I finished at Cordwainers College, they'd finished their apprentice schoolroom was full. And so I went then to James Taylor in Paddington Street and worked as an orthopaedic shoemaker. I then in the 90s, when I was working at Cordwainers, working at James Taylor, I then got the opportunity to go and work for Terry Moore at Foster's in Jermyn Street. And I was their long boot maker there. So with Terry, I made all of the riding boots. I made the polo boots, the long boots.
And Maxwell's has a particular history.
Yeah. Well, again, I was at Maxwell's as well, because Maxwell's was absorbed into Foster's. When I first started when I first started making long boots, Maxwell's was a different business. It was a separate business, originally in Savile Row, and then it moved around the West End and Mayfair for a bit. And then eventually Foster's bought it and amalgamated it into their business as well. So I originally started off making long boots at Maxwell's, and then ultimately ended up at Foster's with Terry Moore making the long boots there.
Okay.
And so what I really did for them was the long boot making. I moved into the world of women's fashion, and I helped a woman called Georgina Goodman set up her women's fashion business, and I worked in fashion shoes for a bit. And then in the mid 2000s, I went to Cleverley's and worked as Cleverley as a last maker. And I did all of their American travelling on the East Coast, New York, Boston, Chicago. I did the East Coast of America for many years for them.
Okay, and that would have been alongside John Carnera.
John Carnera and George Glasgow.
Okay.
Yeah, so those two I worked with there. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so, and then now, you know, you've since left Cleverley, and now you're also, in addition to kind of teaching at the Last Maker House, you know, doing your own bespoke shoemaking. Is that right?
Yes, indeed, yes.
Okay.
So I'm currently in the process of setting up, you know, a small independent bespoke shoemaking business in Mayfair at the moment, St George's Street. So I'm sharing premises with a friend of mine, Josh Byrne, who has a tailoring business, Byrne & Burge, in St George's Street in Mayfair.
Okay.
So that's where I'm going to be based in the future.
And so one of the things that you were saying that was kind of unique about your approach to the bespoke shoemaking is that, you know, that you do the last making, the pattern making, you know, the clicking, and actually, you know, the closing all yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, I make the shoes really from start to finish. And that's the way I just like to work, just as an independent shoemaker, you know, making bespoke shoes by hand traditionally just for individual customers, really, individual clients.
Okay.
So when a client comes to see me, what they need to understand is it's actually me who's making the shoes. It's not actually going anywhere else. You know, I'm the person that is sort of solely responsible for making their shoes, really.
Okay. Well, what do you have for us here? What is this?
So interestingly enough, quick story, a couple of years ago, I was with my wife on holiday in Florence, and we went to the Gucci museum where they have all of their bags and all historical, all of the stuff that they made. And they had some wonderful pigskin luggage which they had made in the 1930s. And just ironically, when we got back to London, a friend of mine was leaving town and she said, "Dominic, I bought you a present." And she gave me the most fantastic 1930s Gucci bespoke shoe carrying case, which a client had made for him. He'd obviously was having his shoes made for him, and he commissioned Gucci to make an individual shoe bag for me. And of course I was setting up a business, and I thought, you know, I need to carry some samples around with me as well. So, you know what? I'm going to make myself a copy of that. So I sat down and designed and made myself a copy of a bag. And I mean, I've changed it a bit. I put some studs in the bottom. I've made it a bit more hard wearing, and I've made it a bit stronger, just purely and simply. He was obviously traveling around in a Rolls Royce or Lamborghini or something, and I'm on the train. So it's got to be a little more robust.
Yeah, okay.
But I designed and made a shoe carrying case, which is essentially just to carry some samples around in with it, really.
Well, great. Can we see the samples?
Yeah, indeed we can. I will start off over this side. This is probably the first place to start. If you're a bespoke shoemaker, there's a number of things that you really need to think about. The first thing is materials. You need to think about the material that you're actually going to make the shoes in. Just as a quick note, Kirby, a Beluti knot.
Yeah,
you know what? I learned to tie that. Yeah. Courtesy of your Hanger Project YouTube channel. So there we are. There's the
beautiful
first thing.
Knot.
And this is, as I said, this is the only shoe that you're actually allowed to smell. You can actually sniff that leather and just actually tell me what that reminds me of.
Yeah.
What does that remind you of?
It smells exactly like the Russian reindeer.
Exactly. That is. And there's a really interesting story behind this, because in one of your YouTubes you discuss about Cleverley and his grandfather remembering the original Russian reindeer. And this is a leather that is made by the same people. Most of us in the bespoke world use the same soles and heels. They're tanned by bakers in Cloyton, Devon. Okay. It's the only original oak bark tanner left that we have in England who can actually tan leather out of oak and make all of our soles, heels, all of the insoles and the stiffeners and the toe puffs that we use. And Andrew Parr down at Baker's was fascinated with this story of the Russian leather and how they lost the recipe. So he sent out some translators and some chemists to try and track down the original recipe. Yeah. And so he went over to Russia and he went through the textbooks and he went through the history of Russian calf, and he decided, because they're oak bark tanners, they're traditional old tanners, and they tan leather, the sole leather, in a similar way that they can tan the upper leather as well. So, I mean, he went on a 4-year track down to actually start reading the books, looking at the various chemistries, the various recipes that they were using to make the Russian calf, and they started to reproduce it. Wow. So they've actually started to manufacture the Russian calf just as it was made before. It's got the same smell, it's got the same liquor, the same tanning pits, you know, all of the skins are spending the same amount of time. I mean, the skins are in the pits for a year and a day, you know, so it's not a cheap leather to get, and it's probably about as rare as the original Russian calf because they just don't make very much of it. Absolutely. So again, it's a really rare item. Yeah, but it's really, in terms of a reproduction, it's just as cleverly remembers his grandfather talking about the actual Russian calf leather. It's as similar as you can get to the Russian.
And what were the properties of the Russian? I mean, was it just particularly hardy or strong, or did it have any properties other than just kind of the hatch grain, and that's just how they tanned leather?
In a way, it was just a hardy leather that they were actually, it was moving from Russia to Spain to be made into boots, really, essentially. It was just it was just the leather that they happened to use at the time, really, but it was particularly hard wearing and was particularly tough.
Beautiful, that's fascinating.
Materials. Then M is for kind of making, and this is a Norwegian shoe. I mean, it's full of what, as a bespoke shoemaker, you would call making. It's got, as a closer, it's got the split and turn apron running around the front here. It's got the Norwegian stitch and the welt on there. It's a heavier looking shoe. It's made out of the Cordovan Horween. It's your Chicago-based Horween Cordovan company. So it's got a lovely split depth toe and patina, split toe to it.
With the blind seam.
Blind seam on it, yeah. So that's kind of the second aspect of a bespoke shoemaker's art, the ability to actually make stuff, really. So we've got materials here, we've got making here, and the third one on the M side is what I call magic. This is kind of, it's a tricky shoe. This is the equivalent of smoke screens and mirrors in the shoemaking world. I mean, if Shakespeare's Prospero was a shoe designer rather than sort of a magician and a mystic magician, this is the kind of shoe he would make. There's something intriguing going on with this shoe. It's a complicated pattern, but it's full of shoe design. It's about balance, it's about proportion, it's about styling, it's about shape. And that really is how you begin to bring everything together in the shoemaker's art, in the bespoke shoemaker's art, really.
It's an absolutely beautiful, elegant shoe.
Yeah, and it's a little bit of a mystery. There's some really tricky pattern making going on in there, and there's some tricky usage of material in there. So it's just, it's how you actually bring everything together, a combination of
I mean, what separates an absolutely beautiful, kind of elegant shoe? I mean, something that, you know, strikes the eye and just has a beauty to it, from something that, you know, is maybe is technically well executed, but just not gorgeous.
You know, I think that's the shoemaker's art. You know, many people are really good about technically being good shoemakers. You know, they can measure your feet, they can make you a great last, everything's going to fit, everything's going to be in the right place. But what a good shoemaker has to do, he has to cut some life into the leather. Without the ability to actually cut life into the leather, you just get a flat two-dimensional product, and that's what shoemakers do. It's not something you can teach people really. Ultimately, you just have to gain that through experience and through, you know, it's kind of the magic of working really, you know, and it's just that. But it is the difference between being able to cut some life into something and making something which just looks flat and pretty ordinary. So this in terms of a design, you know, much the same shape. It's just playing with the design. It's just working with the materials, working with the design to create something which has got a sort of a new aspect of life.
So same last.
Same last, same
pattern.
shape. It's the same pattern, you know, the aprons at the split toe. It's actually the same pattern, but just played with in a different way with different materials, sort of three-quarter cut. It's an asymmetric cut, so the counter is running around the back here and coming down onto the inside. The plain calfskin is sweeping over the front. So again, it's just working with design, it's working with, again, they've both got the kind of classic bespoke
heels.
Construction, you know, with the beveled waists, the heels, the sort of classic bespoke shoemaking really. And then there's a, you know, again, a similar type of thing, a classic double monk shoe. With just a
so again,
different toe shape.
This would be a different last, right? Because it's
a different last, different toe shape on that one.
Would a double monk be a lace-up last?
Yes, it's the same fit as a lace-up last. Yeah, it's the same fit as a lace-up last. Yeah.
So another play on materials.
Play on materials, asymmetric pattern making, so it's different on the outside as well as the inside. So it just gives you, wherever you look at these shoes, you get, wherever you look at them, you get a different view. There's something happening all the way round. So I think that, you know, that is again part of the.
Do you have a particular interest in kind of pattern design?
Pattern. I've always worked as a designer as well and a pattern maker. That's what I used to teach. That's what I've taught at the colleges, you know, design and pattern making. So what you actually have to understand is that, you know, the pattern is going to help the design, and it all actually helps. You know, it's about getting the proportions right and the balance right. And all of that is actually when you actually come, first of all, you've got to make a good last, but then secondly, the key is you've got to cut a good pattern. And the pattern has to fit the last, because the last is going to fit the client's feet, but the pattern is going to actually make the shoe. And then finally in the sample bag, we're back to material again.
Wow.
This is a loafer. The important thing about this shoe is that the skin comes in a very distinct shape. So you can only really make one style of shoe in it if you actually want to really work with the shape of the skin. As you can see, the scaling is rolling up the side, round the back, and coming down onto the inside there. So it's really about balancing the actual design to fit the shape of the skin. Crocodile belly, well actually it's an ostrich leg. It's the front leg of an ostrich, yeah. So these scales running down here are actually the scales that run down the front of the ostrich's leg.
Whenever you made this, were you kind of playing on this kind of dragon skin? Because I mean, look at the tassels, even these are.
Yeah, that's all part of the design. So the design, the whole thing has to balance really. And this apron shape, on this design with this skin, it has to be there because you actually have to use the nature of the skin in the way it works. And this front seam here and the way that the scales sweep up the side, round the back and down onto the inside, that all has to kind of work because you actually have to fit the material. So that's all kind of part of the bespoke maker's art really, is a shoemaker's art, is to actually use the materials that the clients are choosing to actually make some interesting looking shoes really.
Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, well I think bespoke shoemakers, I mean if you look at this Norwegian style here or that loafer, what we have are things which are pure classics. You know, these are and to a certain extent the chucker boot as well. They've got a timeless elegance to them, which, I mean, those shoes are just going, their design is perfect really. It sort of can't be enhanced. But what you can do as a bespoke shoemaker is begin to actually just tweak and change some of the details to make something which has an element, maybe a signature of your own view about the way bespoke styling could work.
Yeah.
So most of us, I mean, as a bespoke shoemaker, and if I was actually meeting a new client, I would probably say, actually, you don't really want to get involved in any of these. You know, if you're coming to me for the first time and saying, Dominic, you know, I've decided I need to have a pair of bespoke shoes made, I'd probably say, well, actually, you need to start off with something black, and you probably want to go no further than the Cap-Toe Oxford. I mean, the thing about the bespoke shoemaking industry is, you know, we're talking about bespoke shoes, but what we're talking about is the idea of bespoke.
Yeah.
We're talking about the idea of you or whoever coming to an individual like me to get something made for him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in many ways, once you're confident that the person that you're talking to can actually make some stuff for you, what's the bespoke business itself is really about our relationship. It's about a relationship. It's really not so much about this trickiness or that trickiness or this colour. It's actually, how are we going to get on as people?
Yeah.
Are we actually going to be able to get involved in a dialogue which is going to enable you to get made for you what you actually want and be happy with?
Yeah.
And that's the bespoke business, really. And as I would say, as long as you can find someone who can cut some life into some leather, then you're going to be in a good position.
Yeah.
So that's where bespoke starts for me. It starts with relationships. We then obviously got to make you a reasonable last, which is going to fit your foot. And then we've got to style a shoe that you're going to be comfortable with.
So how does that back and forth collaboration, you know, how does that dance work? Because, you know, I've always been of the opinion that, you know, you're going to a bespoke shoemaker, you know, like yourself, Dominique, because, you know, someone's buying into kind of your vision, your passion, you know, your ability to put life into the material. And that requires kind of a certain, you know, position or, you know, viewpoint. And so how does that work or balance with clients' preferences? Because I've always felt that in anything that's being made or bespoke, if the client just walks in and says, I want this made, then it doesn't give the opportunity to the, you know, the maker to really use this as a canvas for art.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of balance those things? I mean, even something like a black Cap-Toe Oxford, I mean, how would you work in, you know, kind of your signature or kind of your life into that?
Well, that's an interesting question, because I think one of the things that often some shoemakers and shoe designers get a bit lost in is that they want to over-stylize their product onto their client. What I actually would want to do is actually make a pair of shoes for you or for any client that when they actually walk into the room, the first thing that somebody sees is not necessarily their shoes. They see the person first rather than the pair of shoes walking into the room. We've all had that experience where somebody comes into the room and you think, oh my, whoa, easy. What have you got on your feet there? So the point is that sometimes bespoke shoemaking is something that you see on a second glance, on a second look. And it's when that you find yourself in a room with a lot of other gentlemen with all black cap-toed Oxfords where everyone's wearing them, but you actually look round and you think, actually, that's got a really nice something to it. It's got a really nice style to it. It's got a really nice shape to it. And you can't really explain what that is. There's something that you actually can almost feel and you can see, but you don't know what it is. Everyone's wearing black cap-toed Oxfords, but somehow a shoemaker's cut some extra shape and an extra dynamic into that pair of cap-toed Oxfords. And that's, you know, that's a difficult thing to find.
You know, so whenever you finish a pair of shoes, I mean, what makes it kind of a Dominique Casey shoe? I mean, you've put this life into the material. You know, it's got this kind of subtle elegance. You know, the shoe is not, you know, it's not its own calling card. So I mean, is it just kind of a subtle, kind of almost?
Yeah, it's a subtle. It's something that you can't explain really. You know, if the client goes out of the studio happy and confident and walking well, then that's really my job done. My job's done really. So I think as long as that's what the skill of a bespoke shoemaker is really.
And about how many shoes a year? I mean, so you're doing it all yourself.
Yes,
so,
exactly.
And it's quite an
very
exclusive.
very small number really. Sort of a maximum output of sort of 24 pairs a year really.
Yeah. Wow.
That's all that's going to happen really.
So if anyone is interested in, kind of learning more about what you're doing, I guess the best way for them to get in touch with you is probably through Instagram on Last Maker House.
Yeah, Last Maker House, or my own Instagram account, Left-Handed Shoemaker.
Left-handed shoemaker. That's
Left-Handed Shoemaker, or DominicCasey.com.
Well, anyone that is looking for, a truly kind of boutique, bespoke shoemaking experience, I mean, you should absolutely consider Dominique Casey if you're passing through London. An absolute gentleman, incredible amount of personality, beautiful shoes, and I can't wait to see what you're able to put together for me. I mean, I'm really, truly excited about it.
Yeah.
Thank
Great,
you so much.
Kirby.
Yeah,
Thanks
great.
for coming.
Cheers. Yeah,
we
thank you.
enjoyed it. Great fun. Thanks.
If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and please subscribe to our channel and turn on your notifications by clicking the bell to the right of the subscribe button so that you can learn whenever we release new videos. If you have any questions or comments about anything we discussed on this video, please ask them in the comments section below. And of course, please visit hangerproject.com, where we have the largest, most comprehensive collection of luxury garment care and shoe care accessories in the world, as well as many other incredible products for the well-dressed. And while you are there, subscribe to our newsletter to receive notifications of new product launches, promotions, as well as a weekly digest of all the videos we publish here on our YouTube channel.